Thank you to the good people, the truly good people of the group Palestine is our heart, for allowing me to share this live stream video here. Stalling for time for a moment to make sure the stream doesn't drop because I am perpetually shadow banned by fascistic social media. Oftentimes I am unable to share live streams anywhere here. I'm Johannon Ben-Zion, a voice crying out in the wilderness, crying out for a technological New Jerusalem, emphasis on the technological, not perhaps say the New Jerusalem as a Judeo-Christian sort of mythology. I titled this talk Johannon Ben P4lestine. I was not born with the name Johannon Ben-Zion. It is a nom de guerre, not a slave name. And I have used it for some years. It's meant to be suggestive of this cyber communistic outcome. And I have, in more recent years, made a study of cybernetics and systems theory and scientific socialist and scientific communist thought in the hopes of, well, among other things, continuing to further describe the ideas in the first draft of the book that I wrote, how to use AI to build communism in your lifetime, because if we don't, humans will soon be extinct. It's a rather long title, but I think it does do the trick. And but also understanding first and foremost, the latter part of that statement, how to avoid a multi-billion person loss of life or total loss of human life caused by capitalism's climate apocalypse. And the real culprit there, of course, is the fascist United States, its military-industrial complex, $1 trillion a year abomination, an amount of money that could stabilize entire continents, $1 trillion a year abomination that is the world's worst polluter. It uses more fossil fuels than other super polluters. But it's far worse than that, because its only real job on the world stage is to protect other super polluters, super polluting corporations, or in the context of this kind of conversation, the Zionist fascist puppet state of Israel, which should best be viewed as a part of the fascist United States. Upwards of 80% of its ostensible funding for the Gaza genocide, a horror unlike any other in modern history, comes from the fascist United States. And you can not decouple the history of this absurdity of the modern state of Israel from U.S. funding and steering at any point. It's accurate to say that without that malign fascist influence on this state would not exist. And all of these people, the sorts of people like high-level Israeli officials who are openly genocidal and openly fascistic, or the large mass of Israelis who will, the only notable protest of Israelis in recent years was a large protest of people protesting for the right of the fascist IDF soldiers to sexually assault male prisoners of Palestinian descent who are generally being held without charge, the real hostages. When you say release the hostages, you shouldn't be talking about Israelis. They are fascist occupiers. You should be talking about the thousands of people who are held, oftentimes for a great portion of their life, oftentimes dying in custody without charge. This Palestinian state is an open air concentration camp, or let's say a concentration camp of a slightly different configuration, but nevertheless, um, this essential mechanics of a concentration camp and death camp are clearly there when you see any male visibly above 6 years old being summarily executed for no crime at all, um, uh, because they represent the possibility of a person standing up in defiance of this fascist occupation. And the United States is only in the business of such fascistic things. It is a settler colony of a similar kind, and it has killed 300 million people in anti-communist wars, wars of theft, and genocidal actions of a similar kind in its history, according to the book Endless Holocausts. I'll share a link to an audiobook version of that. And if you haven't read books of this kind, um, uh, you're not in a position to make any statements about geopolitics. I sat in for a few moments a religious service of a kind of people interested in a subject that I'm interested in, indefinite lifespan for humanity. Of course, my interest in it is rather different from theirs. I think that um, 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 a public health service, the single payer kind, that not only is able to use advanced technology and advanced computing to cure more and more disease, but ultimately to reverse the effects of aging and decrepitude, or stop them, could be built. By and large, people who are interested in this thing, indefinite lifespan, are rather different. They are, in a word, neoliberals, far-right capitalists, and neoconservatives. And so this collection of neoliberals and neoconservatives, oftentimes a lot of different people talking at these events, and a recurring theme among these people was saying, we don't see ourselves as American, we don't see ourselves as fascists. A lot of Israelis go to this particular thing. They say, we don't see ourselves as Israelis. But none of these people, I guarantee you, have read books like revolutionary thinkers, or liberation thinkers. When I share this book, Endless Holocausts, it's on a playlist of many other works, including the works of Willem Pap and Norman Finkelstein and Leila Khaled, and used to have a book on that list by Yahya Sinwar, one or two books. Those were removed by YouTube because a person talking about their experiences under fascist occupation is not acceptable to fascists. But on that list, you can see many other people like Sinwar or Khaled talking. You can read all the major works of Edward Said just from that audiobook playlist, for example. So I highly recommend that you be engaging as much as possible with revolutionary thought. Generally, probably not as easy as it sounds. You have other obligations, you have a life to live, but depending on the nature of your routine and work, it might be very possible for you to put one earbud in and listen to many audiobooks of liberation and revolutionary works. And maybe somebody says, what are you doing? You're supposed to be sweeping this floor. You're listening to music. You say, no, I have one earbud in. How could I possibly be listening to music? Music is presented in stereo. I'm expecting a call. And if you bring it up again, we're going to have a problem. And then continue about your business and listening to your audiobook. This, well, I'll change subject. I think I've done enough to justify posting this to Palestine as our heart. So I'll change subject to something more to do with advanced technology. Um, I was looking for things to discuss, and so I was searching news feeds for these words: open source large language model, um, and of course, this is a computer science discipline, a machine learning discipline that is increasingly of interest, I think, in recent years, because while most of the Western press fawns over the doings of for-profit concerns developing large language model products of a rather limited utility, and I'll talk more about why that's a limited utility in a moment. Um, the um, um, the open source large language model is of real interest because it doesn't hold the same problems that entities like ChatGPT, OpenAI, affiliated to a high degree with different omnicidal concerns, problematic concerns, for profit software concerns like Microsoft, and or its main competitor, Google. These are both entities, Microsoft and Google, that are in the process, as we speak, of building nuclear power plants, not to supply power to human beings, but to supply power to themselves so that they can power their vile for profit superintelligence undertakings. And we should contrast this bourgeois superintelligence, which is really super stupidity, because the thing oriented by the neoliberal and neoconservative mandates of almost every U.S. Operation um, could not possibly do anything but hasten capitalism's climate apocalypse. And imbuing such operations with a kind of superpower in a comic book sense, rather than the sense it's used in geopolitics, um, is a big mistake, a big mistake. It's only accelerating. Many of these people would be described as tech accelerationists. Effective accelerationism is a term that they prefer to use. But these kinds of people, despite their statements of peace on earth, goodwill toward men, while they surreptitiously helped to arrange, using their great technological power, the murder of Arabs in 500,000 in the last year. Um, their statements of peace on earth and goodwill toward men are meaningless because they are all effectively techno-fascists, almost to a man. But there are people in the Western world who are more focused on things like open source software and broader technological effects arranged on those principles. Those people don't get written about hundreds of times a week by the mainstream media the way that the techno-fascists do. And of course, they have then a commensurate lack of resources relative to those people. But I would say in this U.S. fascist so-called rules-based order, it's a minor miracle that open source, something like an open source large language model that would have agentic capabilities, is a thing that's been allowed to exist at all. Of course, you would say this of network computing in a more, as well, in a more general sense. The these things were not developed to be products for any human being to use. They were developed to be products to be used by exclusively by military operatives, and then academics kind of stole fire from these demonic gods in the form of military contractors, and so the internet was born, as we understand it. If the fascist United States could have avoided that outcome of letting anyone else use advanced technology other than fascists, they certainly would have done that. And we would say probably the same thing of the development of open source large language models. There are 8.2 billion people on this planet. Only 9% of them are European descended fascist pigs or European descended people who are tending to be crypto-fascistic at best. And so all of those other people who are not European descended or not crypto-fascistic in the many billions sometimes do have a little something to say about world affairs. But of course, the U.S. European descended crypto-fascist and techno-fascist has an outsized influence on these things. Well, I wanted a major area of this was talking about why this focus on building open source work group should really be steered by scientific socialist and scientific communist thought, as opposed to anarchistic or generally more anti-establishment impulse. I've talked a lot on this show about how the fascist Pinochet, installed by the fascist United States, not only killed hundreds of thousands of people in Chile and destroyed Allende's Chile, a thing that's well understood by people who have any understanding at all of history, but also destroyed something called Project Cybersyn, which was not a project in the sense that sometimes this word is used. It was a technological planned economy that was being rolled out across the country from the years 1971 to 1973. A kind of thing that would have hastened, rather than held back, the building of effects like a people's superintelligence or an AI takeoff. I think it's accurate to say that without the fascist United States, even when you consider its role in developing these kinds of technologies, computing, networked computing, and things associated there, without the fascist United States, we would have already seen an AI takeoff. The fascist United States has done things like destroyed countries who would have been in a position quite nearly as much as Chile to do things like build technological planned economies and people's superintelligences over and over again. It's a 60-year war against the first foray into state socialism, the USSR, which the fascist West generally and the fascist United States most notably hindered in ordinary operations. That's to say, transitioning from effective wartime considerations to things like building a technological planned economy, things that would have quite naturally been done by as state socialists, were they not under constant attack by fascist and elitist forces. By and large, anarchists will minimize that kind of thing that I've just said. By and large, the anti-establishment or anarchistic language is effectively the neoliberal language. That was a major point that I wanted to say. And after Allende's Chile was destroyed, we entered this world of a new kind of far right capitalism that's known as neoliberalism, and this sort of thing is justified through bourgeois propaganda by a kind of anti-establishment rhetoric, right? I guess if you wanted to describe this in as few words as possible, you would use the title of Thomas Friedman's book, The World is Flat, which I will not recommend. If anybody comes to me and says, I just read The World is Flat, Ben, I'm as likely to kick them in the fucking stomach as anything. I will not share an audiobook link to that book. I did read it when it came out. But this idea that far right capitalism is leveling playing fields and generally curtailing the pernicious influence of the state generally is one of the biggest lies, but it's essentially also the fundamental difference between the anarchist and the scientific socialist or scientific communist. The belief that the state must be combated first is the primary contradiction, rather than financial capital being a primary contradiction, which, when removed, would lead to the withering of the state overall. The sounder analysis by far, anarchists generally don't hold a candle to scientific socialists and scientific communists as serious thinkers. And this is well in evidence by the fact that the unenlightened masses will tend to ingest bourgeois propaganda like that underpinning the neoliberal, the justification of the neoliberal supremacy of recent decades. It's not a laughing matter. So by and large, unfortunately, in the West, people who are working on open source software or express an interest in open source software development are people who are operating under this specific set of misapprehensions. That's to say, they've ingested this bourgeois ideological filth, the world is flat kind of thinking. And so this is a handicap, a serious handicap, because the people who have all the resources for advanced computing generally have a even more distilled mandate from the ruling elites than that. And then the people who have considered much of this at all, or taken any active role in any of this, professionally or otherwise, the second tier of neoliberals, the people who are not just of a professional managerial class type, operating from a playbook, a neoliberal playbook, but who nevertheless have a nearly the same degree of brainwashing. That describes much of the tech-focused people in the Western world. Overwhelmingly, the tech-focused people in the Western world. And this is bad because we have 5 years left before runaway overheating from capitalism's climate apocalypse. We could use the advanced computing, particularly open source large language models arrayed in this high automation work group that would be a workforce multiplier that could be strong enough. This revolutionary weapon could be used in this particular way to build something that's strong enough to challenge this entrenched set of fascistic interests and the general ignorance of the bourgeois propagandized to The problem of capitalism and climate apocalypse is not bad vibes coming from the ruling elites and various fascist sympathizers. It's a problem specifically of the industrial base. And the industrial base is what must be transformed. We must abolish military industrial complexes. Um, and if anyone is interested in working with me, I was a presidential candidate in 2024, write-in candidate for the United States. I did not win the presidency, but I did talk to a lot of people about these ideas. And My candidacy for 2024, like for 2028, is based on an executive order that I wrote in anticipation of being elected president that would disband the United States federal government and place and dismantle wholly the United States military-industrial complex, the chief culprit in the omnicide, and place relevant holdings of the United States federal government, which are unfortunately relatively few compared to military spending, in the hands of Native American semi-autonomous nations, which would then be fully autonomous, which would operate as an oversight network, maintaining things like um, um, public health services and the housing authority and the genuine necessaries that would be supplied to the United States, former 50 United States and territories. Um, and This would then be a land back initiative, um, placing Turtle Island uh, back in the hands of the righteous stewards of these lands for thousands of years before the European fascist pig came along and started to bring about the end of mankind. And There is um, no path to stopping capitalism's climate apocalypse without operating very much in the spirit of this, dismantling this ringleader of the omnicide, the United States fascist military industrial complex. Similarly, there is no possibility of building superintelligence or a people's superintelligence without a deep understanding of these ideas of genuine revolutionary and liberation thought, as opposed to the often, not overwhelmingly in every situation, but often uh, bourgeois tainted thought of other putatively anti-establishment or anarchistic trends. And this um, um, Again, this difference between superintelligence and super stupidity, superpowered super stupidity of the fascist West and its development of advanced computing, so-called AI, cannot be overstated. Um, I will look at some. So one way of thinking of this is the vacillation of the high-profile technologist. I'm looking at two articles. Sam Altman claims that AGI, something like the first step toward superintelligence, autonomous thinking machines, artificial general intelligence, is achievable with current hardware. That's his quote. He also says AGI will have come and gone, in another article, in 5 years with surprising little change in society. And people who are Google watchers, who are critical of U.S. fascism, of which Google is basically one of the biggest parts, have said things along these lines for years, in fact, but with less equivocating, as Mr. Alton does, namely that the forces of something like the advanced computing of Google of, say, 2017, before large language models were really on anybody's radar, is nevertheless a thing powerful enough to build a people's superintelligence. We're not handicapped by this fascistic, superpowered, super stupidity, this mandate of neoconservatism and neoliberalism that more or less influences every aspect of the work of technologists in the West and the tech culture trends of the West. And so this vacillation of people, and this is almost all technologists of the West give you this one-two punch every single time they open their mouths. One, superintelligence will soon be built, but of course they're referring to not to a people's superintelligence, but to this fascistic super stupidity. And two, and that will transform the world. But two, we don't surprisingly little will come of it. They don't really even talk generally in the terms of material conditions or bettering of human beings. They talk about the tool, uh, the what should be a revolutionary weapon. They talk about the systems as the outcome. They talk about the governance structures and the elitist formations as the outcome, not as a benefit of human beings. So they say this could make us rich, or it could destroy humankind. We're not sure which. There's no conversation about doing this other thing of bettering humankind by building a people's superintelligence and changing people's material conditions, which necessarily means the fight to abolish private wealth. I was going to post this in a group called Left Transhumanism, which is a smaller group, and I've hosted conversations of this kind before. There's probably 20 people in that group, maybe 10% of that group who are actually people who are willing to stand up to end financial capital, to end private wealth. So that anyone else short of that is just kind of interloper or a person who's left-ish, but a person who's effectively still capitalistic. And that's a serious problem with these people. I had a few other articles that I want to read, but I'll save that perhaps for tomorrow. I want to thank you for your time. I'm calling